Good evening, everybody. And if you're just joining, welcome to Avity's Daily News. We take a Christian worldview perspective and also add into it high levels of insight that you're not going to get anywhere else. This is meant to be a breaking news station with unique perspectives. That's not what you're going to get everywhere else. So we're going to start out, since you're new, we'll give you an understanding. We're going to give you the topic of the day. We're going to give you the reading of the day. We're going to read said reading, and then we're going to go through the news, some discussion, and at the end, this will kind of turn into a small group or Bible study on how what we just learned about what's happening in the world, how it would relate, and how to view it through a Christian perspective. We'll break it up so you don't have to go there if you don't want to, but it's here on the full episode or in segments if you want to reach it. So today, we're talking about the government reopening, the Epstein files that are released, and all this seems to come at a timely moment. And why is everyone so confused on Venezuela? Are we invading? What's happening there? Why would we even be involved? Well, we're going to talk about that tonight. This is Avity's Daily News. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. Once again, please hit the like, subscribe, notification bell, whether it's on YouTube or Rumble or any of the things. Retweet, reshare, do whatever you want. Tag us. Tag as many people as you want to see this because we're going to bring you some perspective that you're not getting anywhere else. I know because I and the people who work on this download a lot of information very quickly, and we're noticing a few things that people aren't saying, nor do they seem to have a perspective that makes sense. Everyone is just reacting, and it's a echo chamber of noise, and the noise that's bouncing off the echo chamber is whatever version of whatever flavor you subscribe to with, the algorithms that contain your worldview. So we want to provide you something fresh and outside of that. Today, we're going to start out with the readings. These have to do with the calendar that go throughout a 3-year course to walk you through the entire Bible. You can follow along if you want, or you can just fast forward if you like. But today's reading, which is actually assigned to today for several hundred years because of how the calendar's been set up, wildly specific. It's from the Book of Wisdom. So our readings today are from the Book of Wisdom 6. Response psalm is Psalm 82, 3 through 4, and then 6 through 7 inclusive. And then we also have the Gospel of Luke. And for those of you who aren't aware of the Bible, or at least have heard some of the stories, the Gospel of Luke is specifically the one in Luke 14 where we hear the story of the prodigal son, which is very interesting. Is something that a lot of people focus on the prodigal, and they don't focus on the son that stayed and let the other one get lost. And we can talk about that at another time. But let's just get into the Book of Wisdom and then get into our take on today's news. All right. So, Book of Wisdom 6, 1 through 11. Listen therefore, O kings, and understand. Learn, O judges of the ends of the earth. Give ear that your ruler over multitudes and boasts over many nations. For your dominion was given to you from the Lord, and your sovereignty from on most high. Who will search out your works and inquire into your plans? Because as servants of his kingdom, you did not rule rightly, nor keep the law, nor walk according to the purpose of God. He will come upon you terribly and swiftly, because severe judgment falls on those in high places. For the lowliest man may be pardoned in mercy, but mighty men will be mightily tested. For the Lord of all will not stand in awe of anyone, nor show deference to greatness, because he himself made both great and small, and he takes thought for all alike. But a strict inquiry is in store for the mighty. To you then, O monarchs, my words are directed, that you may learn wisdom and not transgress. For they will be made holy who observe holy things in holiness. And those who have been taught them will be, and those who have been taught them will find a defense. Therefore, set your desire on my words, long for them, and you will be instructed. Short version, since you probably want to get through to the news, is if you're given a lot of responsibility, you're going to be tested based on that responsibility. Straight out of Spider-Man. No affiliation. To whom much is given, much will be tested and expected. Right now, there's a lot of people who have their leader and who they like. Okay. We're going to eliminate all that. And we're just going to look at one group of people who are very clearly not happy with their leader, the people of Venezuela. We filmed the segment earlier to be on time and give real in the moment updates about the news. So we're going to piece that in here about what is going on in Venezuela and our involvement. In addition, some of the other smoke screens and things that are occurring in Congress or what might be going on to cover our movements. And then we're going to come back here. Well, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us on a special Wednesday episode. A lot happening today. The day after Veterans Day. A big news day in the middle of the week. This is surprising to many. What's happening? Everyone just got off of a day of celebrating their loved ones and their service to the country. The Marines are finally sobering up from a long week of partying, especially a Marine Corps birthday on a Tuesday and a Monday and a Veterans Day on a Tuesday is the ultimate 96, if you know what that means in military jargon. Anyway. Why right now? Well, we saw a bunch of different things politically happening that are intentional and that have likely been planned for quite a while. You saw in our last episode that Venezuela seemed to possibly have been in the works for the last few months, if not even longer. We've been discussing it internally, and we believe that this plan has been established since possibly before Trump took office. Why? Because of what happened in his first month. The president and the administration made a proclamation that the Gulf of Mexico would be transferred into being called, renamed by America, the Gulf of America. The United States of America is now calling the body of water that used to be known as the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. Why? North, Central, and South America all border it, and it's not one country that controls it, nor any longer controls the power to manage who comes in and who goes out of the ports in that area. It's shared by all and by more countries than just Mexico. So it has a logical reason behind it that you can kind of sell to other people within the different continents. However, it is a move that you see typically when somebody is about to claim an area as well. Gulf of America, it didn't really make much sense in terms of, well, the Caribbean's going to stay the same. They're not going to go after Jamaica. However, if we look into Crimea or if we look into Azerbaijan in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, or we look into the conflict on the border of China and India, one of the first moves with the intent to end up moving into an area and reclaiming it for a government or a nation is to name it by something that associates it with the nation that is going to be absorbing it. So, why name the Gulf of America the Gulf of America? It seems silly, seems ridiculous. It does. Actually, it seems very much on brand for MAGA. Over the top, the left can decry how racist and stupid it is. The right can thumb their nose at the left and enjoy. And all the while, nobody's really understanding. Actually, this was to prepare the world for an understanding that America might just become America. What do I mean by that? Maybe Venezuela, comes underneath the United States of America. Maybe it becomes a territory liberated by America. A lot of terms that can get thrown out there, but we're seeing very specific timing. The day after Veterans Day, there's the possibility of a new conflict, not before. Why is there a possibility of a new conflict today? Oh my gosh, would you look at that? They just passed that bill that they've been holding on to for over a month. Why didn't they pass it last week or any of the months before? Well, because the spending was getting to a point where all the cuts are going to cause serious issues for the Democrats. So this is how politics works, guys. You ready? We want to go in. We want to do XYZ. Okay, you have to guarantee that we're not going to lose our spots over here or we're not going to vote for it. All right, what do you want? Let us filibuster and hold out and grandstand until the day after our election. That's a month from now. Yes, it is, but it's what we require to give you those votes that you need to pass this bill. Okay, well then if we're going to give you that, you have to give us something. What do you want? You have to then allow it to delay until after Veterans Day because we got some stuff we want to do as well. All right, we can do that. Boom, boom. Now we got where we're at. Doesn't mean that things weren't moving into place beforehand, as we saw last week with over the weekend, the U.S. Navy rolling in and steaming right off the coast of Venezuela. I can tell you right now, it does not take an entire carrier group, several, what I can only assume are submarines circling the coast in that environment. That's not spilling any beans or from any inside sources. If you have a carrier group, there's submarines there. That's how it works. That's what a carrier group is. There's the carrier and then everything around it that supports it. Essentially, a carrier group is supposed to be able to invade and take over or amphibious land and counter an invasion anywhere in the world. It's why it's such a feared thing that the Americas have so many of them. If you roll in with the carrier group, you can take over that continent, or at least a good portion of it. So, Halloween night, the morning of November 1st, we have a perfect Halloween going into college football Saturday. Lots of distraction. Navy moves in. Are we ready to go? No. Why? Because the government is being held hostage, meaning all the money that we're going to need to support these actions is still currently in the balance. All right, well, let's get them to sign this. What do you need to sign it? Give us till after November 4th. Done. Only one thing. What? If you're going to wait that long, you have to keep, making an issue so that it seems like it's still you, so that they don't think it was just because of that, and we gave it to you. Also, you got to make it go past Veterans Day, because if we're going to start something over here, we don't want the veterans getting pissed off. Yeah, okay, we can do that. 222, 209. Send it to the president. Now it's the president's deal. Now it's the president's fault if all this spending is overspending on the right. Now it's the left's champion. It's their big win, right? They got Mandani in New York. They got all these different people that they're celebrating left and right, winning their elections. They have their high moment, so they've held out and they've saved face. So they are perfectly willing to stand by as the government then moves into a spending position that they don't really care. They never really cared. Now, what's happening outside of this bill? We have additional things to get your attention to. The Epstein files. Thousands of files of the Epstein file were released. Did you hear about this director of this organization and that person of that organization possibly having ties to this country who are meddling in our elections? What about the Epstein list? Distraction, smoke, mirrors, blah, 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 blah. Because all the while, a carrier group has moved in right off the coast of Venezuela. That is the solidification of what is going to happen. There was already the support ships that moved in and the no-fly zone that was established, but the no-fly zone and everything else was established October 31st, November 1st, in the very early morning. Now, we're after Veterans Day. We're right before Thanksgiving. And, that's one other point. The Democrats don't want to have high, expensive cost of goods or most of their voting population, i.e. those who are federal employees, out of work and not able to pay for a Thanksgiving meal. If they did, they would then lose their spot immediately. So there's no way they push a government spending bill past Thanksgiving, ever. You can pretty much guarantee that. Nobody's going to be the one who holds out from more than the majority of their voting bloc not being able to afford Thanksgiving. That is one of the primary things you don't mess with in politics, is holidays that have emotional family ties. Now, right now, we have a 2-week-ish period between now and Thanksgiving. Don't forget, there are 2 other dates I want you to think about. The no-fly zone goes until March of next year around Puerto Rico. And as we discussed in the last episode, don't forget, this was and this still is the back end of the 2 weeks that have the lowest amount of Caribbean traffic in the Southeast Caribbean off the coast of Puerto Rico. So we have limited civilian oversight, limited civilian leaks, limited civilian casualties. We have a hurricane that just rolled through that eliminated any other kind of possibility and cleared a path for a covered shift of the Navy. We have an evening that is coupling a Halloween with a college football Friday. So you have the perfect amount of distraction then to move in the first group. And now you have Veterans Day, Marine Corps birthday, and you have voting day all in a week's time to cover everything else to fill the news cycle. And on the day that the news cycle is going to come to a head and the vote is going to be cast and the president is signing right now on his desk, Epstein files. One of the most talked about and most focused things in the entire news cycle for the last 8 years. One of the things he ran his platform on is top of the line news as well. Meanwhile, in the last 2 days, Nicolas Maduro put all of Venezuela on high alert and said that the invasion is imminent. And the U.S. government has said, we are simply establishing a place that we can have control over the narcotics coming in and out of our country. True. That is a true fact. They do come through there. So they're not lying. However, if somebody were to, touch America's boats, now, don't touch oil. But even slightly less known is this: don't touch America's boats. Don't touch our boats. Somebody's probably going to touch our boats. Somebody's going to slip up and fire something at our boats. And all of a sudden, we're going to need to react. You know what? I'll tell you what. They built this plan, those Maduro, they are coming after us in the ocean because they are trying to make, a posturing in front of their people and come at it. No, that's not what's going to happen. So essentially, Venezuela and Maduro know what's coming. They're fully aware, and they're just trying to get their populace as riled up as possible to create a smokescreen. I can only assume they're already building out their idea. Nicolas Maduro right now is working with his group of advisors as to how he can negotiate his way into some other country's asylum ship, whether it be Russia, China, North Korea. And on the flip side, Venezuela's probably not wrong. We probably are rolling in. We've probably been setting this up for a while. There is already such a move by Russia and China in the continent of Africa for precious metals and oil, and over the central and eastern part of Europe, that it is actually intelligent, guys, if we start solidifying our resources. A lot of people, what's really bizarre to me is Davos and the World Economic Forum and everybody else want a globalist society. So then, in turn, many people also think they want a globalist society, socialism. We're all one people. There's no real nations. We create these things, Well, okay. There is a group of people on that side of the earth who wouldn't like that, and they're taking control of many countries. How would you like to combat that? Oh, they're evil. Support Ukraine. Okay. So if half the world is now against your movement, what side are you on? Well, you definitely can't invade any sovereign nations. Okay. Legally, underneath NATO and other compacts and contracts, yes. However, if your enemy is taking over the world, are you, the world, going to unite against him? Or are you going to sit there and let him continue to piece you off one by one like Hitler did with Europe? Well, a smart person would learn from history and say, I've pretty much got North Korea south of me right now. Like, they're in the same body of water. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to name that body of water after the people who are on this side of the globe, also with the name that people associate with us as a country, America, the Gulf of America. And then we're going to move in to support protecting America. Everyone can get behind that. And then something may happen where you touch our boats. And then, you know what? It's basically North Korea down there. They got bread lines. They're into socialism. They're best friends with Cuba. They have been with Castro. Everything about this screams enemy. How can we have an enemy like that or Cuba in the Gulf of America? That can't happen. We're not going to have the Cuban Missile Crisis again underneath President Trump, okay? It's just not happening. This isn't, this part of the Soviet Union expanding and Sputnik and satellites and spy planes and everything kind of spinning up. We pretty much have an ability to look over the course of the entire globe and see what's going on. There's no guesswork here now. So we're not going to say you can have nukes over here and nukes over here right next to us, or you have to remove them, or you can have... If you're in our side of the world at this point, since the missiles go across worlds, no. And honestly, I see a lot of people who are against invading a sovereign nation. Let me ask you a question. Is it good or bad to liberate people from slavery if it's in a sovereign nation? Now, I'm not supporting things one way or the other. I'm not saying anything. I'm just giving you some understanding that other news channels won't. Is it good or bad if we went into North Korea and liberated the millions of people that are starving, some suffering cannibalism, and worshiping a very evil, misogynistic narcissist as a god. Otherwise, they turn in their family members, or they're killed or starved or, tortured. What's more evil? Bringing them freedom or allowing that to go on? I don't know, because you buy a lot of your shirts and your laptops and your iPhones from places that are made in slave labor by people who are in the country that is currently on our list of enemies, especially in cyber warfare. And their name, once again, rhymes with Fina and Slusha. It's one of my favorite things I've made. I don't know why. It just tickles me. Ha! Okay. Anyway, timing. What do you have to look out for? Well, like we said, this probably had a lead up. It probably has a longer reaching expansion. When does this end? If we go into conflict, March. I can guarantee you right now there will be no additional troops in there in March. Why? Well, two reasons. One, the no-fly list, or the no-fly zone established by the FAA through the DoD, ends in March, the same month that we have the State of the Union. This is needing to be wrapped up by the State of the Union, because this will be the first full year in power statement of Trump and all of his administration. Look at what we did in under a year, or in the first year. Look what we accomplished. We did XYZ. We did this. We did that. We eliminated tyranny and communism on our shores and on the shores of our neighbors. Happens right after voting day. So the Democrats get their win, and they get to utilize this and continue grandstanding for the next year of how much they hate this and hate invading a sovereign nation. Bernie Sanders will probably come out in support of Venezuela and Maduro and say that he is a excellent leader because of his socialist standing. You might even see Mamdani decrying us going into a place full of tyranny waged by a dictatorial person who the rest of the world has called out for being a dictator, and suddenly say, well, this is wrong. How dare we invade a sovereign nation? Okay, sure. Yeah, whatever, man. Like, at this point, if China and Russia can go into Congo and enslave millions of people for the rare earth minerals that you're putting in your NVIDIA chips or your smartphones, and you're fine with it and you just act like you don't know what's going on, if you can get a banana or a pound of bananas for $1, like, slavery is the worst scourge to ever happen to this country, but I do really love getting that free iPhone 16. How do they do it? You know exactly how they do it. You know exactly how those cost of goods are kept cheap. You know how the things that you like when they raise in prices, why it's happening, and you are willfully ignorant because you don't want to talk about it at the dinner table, and you really like how morally superior you are. So you're going to act, where are my pearls? These are reasonably sourced, lab-made vegan pearls, okay? And as I clutch them, how dare you invade a sovereign nation that is trying to throw off the evils of capitalism and live under a social... The only reason socialism's not working in Venezuela is America. I swear that's going to come up. Anyway, point being, we're done for the day here. I just wanted you guys to understand the dates and what to look out for. Two things. One, a lot of conflicting information between the U.S. government and our allies and those who are opposed to us. You might even see China or Russia and Cuba or somebody, a proxy version of them, decrying the United States for invading a sovereign territory while they're currently invading, like, economically all of Africa and militarily Ukraine and several other places. And on the flip side, you're going to see them, decrying how dare a capitalist come in and take over the poor. The people of Venezuela never asked for this. Yeah. I don't know. You don't really build a wall to keep people in unless they don't want to be kept in. And it seems like every place that Venezuela just didn't, it's us that's ruining it for them. They could be totally functional if it wasn't for the capitalist society. Where? In the rest of the world? Really? Okay. Well, give me back your iPhone. No, give it back. But point being, you're going to see people and confusion when things start, similar to when you saw with the invasion in the Middle East, or the response in the Middle East, or the invasion in Europe, or any of these conflicts. One of the things to start looking for in the next 2 weeks, if you know it's going to happen, conflicting reports that are more than significant, not just like, oh, so and so said this. No, I think he said that. Like, hey, these people just landed on our coast, and somebody else being like, never seen that coast in my life. That's the kind of conflicting reports. If you see that, I want to give the United States military families and cousins and everyone else a message. Do not try to contact your family who are in the military who may be currently in that environment. Why? You may have reason to dislike what's happening. You may morally disapprove of what's going on. And I will say here, while we are giving kind of a neutral perspective, if you're thinking we're encouraging this, we're not encouraging anything. We're just enjoying commenting on what's occurring. Okay? We're not endorsing anything one way or the other. We're just trying to let you know how to be informed and to view things through a neutral perspective. So, in this environment, what we are telling you, being from veteran-owned businesses, don't try to contact your family. If you love them and you have moral character, don't. They will be home quicker. There will be less death, hopefully no death, and a larger amount of resolution and less complication to their life and their safety and the safety of those that they are trying to go and what I would call liberate from socialism. I would. I know other people wouldn't, but Nicolas Maduro and the drug cartels have utilized that country kind of like a street hooker. Like they've treated them with the lowest level and gotten all the pleasure and goods out of it that they can and thrown it back out in the street where they left it to die. It's horrible. And I absolutely do not approve of socialism in any facet or capacity. And if it's being run as a government, and as we've seen with Venezuela, run into the ground, no, I don't consider them being sovereign or have a right to rule anymore because now they're just owned by other countries via proxy. If we went into North Korea, I'm not decrying us invading somebody who is enslaving and letting their people just die in abject poverty and complete starvation. I'm not. Yeah, it's bad for us to go to war. Personally, there are some good things you go to war for. War is never okay. Yes, it is. Civil war. Largest payment we've ever made by our nation's blood, treasure, and well-being as a country to make us equal. Necessary. Overcoming evil requires sacrifice. If you don't act when things are peaceful, evil triumphs when good men fail to act. Venezuela, we let it do its thing. Here's where it's at. So, it's a jewel. It's an absolute jewel. Its people, amazing. I've always loved my Venezuelan friends. They're fantastic. The food is amazing. Colombia, the food is amazing. I can't wait for those two places to be somewhere that we can both visit and potentially have a much more safe and working relationship with. Going on a vacation in Venezuela could turn into the same thing as going on a vacation to Miami before the last 20 years when it just exploded. And, the different migrations of people from California. It can become something beautiful where they can build a society on the backs of their resources versus the backs of their people. Okay? So I do think we should pray for their well-being and the well-being of everybody. And for whatever's going to come, this is all speculative, okay? I do not have anything, and I have not written anything down specifically that has been given to me from any intel or news sources. I'm very much neutral. I just have come from a background, and I have friends in this area where we're loving to speculate and provide what real intel speculation looks like. Looks like stuff's about to go down. Pretty much everything leading up to it. And here are the telltale signs. Once again, look for contributing, conflicting stories from both sides increasing drastically. We already have the first major telltale sign. The legislation being passed and the budget to go to war, to go invade, or to liberate, whatever we're going to call it, this group. And we have additionally the thing that I was just discussing, renaming of the Gulf of America. What comes after that? Well, we got a lull. Nobody's getting elected. And Thanksgiving's coming up. So either they can get this done in a couple weeks, or then we have a month and a half before Christmas to get them back. And in the worst case scenario, that's another thing, is you literally have best, mid, and worst case scenarios for all of these with plans that make sense time-wise. Best case scenario, back by Thanksgiving. Let's say things get drawn out. We got a month, a little over a month, back by Christmas or New Year's, because those things matter in terms of a win emotionally. Okay, it's not just, we would love to see our troops get home. Politically, that's a huge win. If you get a win and bring them back, and then commerce and everything else is established. It's like we begin a new year with a new country that's our friend. Last case scenario, March 31st, when the FAA ban gets lifted for that part of Puerto Rico, meaning everything's got to be wrapped up, and it's something that the president and the people beneath him have given orders to the people who are carrying this out. This will be done before this time frame. Anything before then is considered a win. Anything after this is considered a devastating loss to you and your command, and you will be replaced. So get it done, because the president wants to say how big of a win this is in March. And likely it will be. I don't think Russia and China, after everything that they've... Russia's lost so much in capital in the war in Ukraine that they don't have the resources or the Navy to spend any more over in Venezuela that's going to cause us any serious damage. And China is so focused on economics, like they have been, it's a safer bet, and they don't keep losing resources in wars, that they're going to stick around and see what they can do to cause us issues, to cause conflict, and probably, and this is one thing to be aware of, to pay off people like, I don't know, somebody who might have been hooking up with a girl named Fang Fang. Couldn't tell you who that could be. But I mean, it'd be wild, right? If a government official was hooking up with a known foreign national intelligence agent and then still was in government instead of being tried for treason, that'd be wild, hypothetically. Okay, that's it for tonight, guys. Thanks for watching. Borders. Now, this is where we're going to convince you. You ready? If they don't have to go anywhere and they're a U.S. state, then not only are they not going to be seeking asylum, we can now prosecute the people that are making them asylum seekers, meaning the people who are causing them evil, who are doing evil to them in these countries, in this area, that are causing them to risk death, dismemberment, trafficking, organ harvesting, rape, child molestation, or child confiscation, or all of those. All of those risks are worth a higher level of freedom here in America than living in Venezuela, as the world, the IMF, and the World Bank have made clear from these statistics. Well, poof, now you're a U.S. state, which means U.S. state regulations are going to come down on them. The government officials will be removed. You will have new people that are put in place, and you will have new roads that need to be built. You will have new factories that need to be up to OSHA standards. You will have the understanding that, hey, these migrant workers who are making $4 or $2 picking this or doing that or working in this factory secretly, which we just kicked out, which raises our prices here in the homeland because we don't want these people that are here to work for jobs that we wouldn't do. Guess what? They can now do them at home and have a living wage and build their family's wealth. They can have capital. They can have right to, 40 acres and a mule kind of thing, because once you remove power from the government who has socialized everything, now everything is once again needing to be distributed. So if you have 30 million people living in a country that's roughly a third of the size of the U.S., congratulations, it's the new Oregon Trail. And for all of you who want to go and live somewhere else other than California and Florida and want to make your way in the new world, you can move out there. However, we're going to get over to why you might second guess that, or at least get an understanding that they could very quickly become like Texas or Florida given the right conditions. But we're going to get that in a minute. Still on the Democrat side. Protection of human rights from all those trafficking. Now, one that I'm very interested in, that both sides of this will agree, but it seems like most of you don't know that you agree so closely on this. Conservation of wildlife's, parks and wildlife, of our natural beauties, right? The people who grow up in these environments of the Rockies and the Smokies and this, all over the country where we've seen strip mining take effect, that hurts mostly the people who live there and the people who've grown up, and that is part of their soul. That's part of their character. It's not the West Virginia coal miner who wants to see his West Virginia destroyed. It's those people in South America and Europe and Northern America and other parts of Asia who are getting the resources out of those mines, which is why they purchased them and why they don't give a crap if we destroy our natural beauty. Similarly, why they're trying to purchase, China is trying to purchase rare earth mineral deposit areas in our natural parks and some of our forests. That's where most of our REEs, the rare earth minerals that we're getting for NVIDIA and AI chips, the really heavy rare earth minerals that are needed seem to be placed underneath the spots that give us our most beautiful natural resources. Interesting, feels a little divinely oriented that God would be like, are you really going to take and destroy what is perfectly beautiful that I've given you and create a fake version of intelligence? All right, you're going to learn. So we're coming up on the 10-minute side very quickly. Additionally, you will have a gain of, over here you have all these issues with people who are, kicking out migrants based on them being other. Most of you consider it to be a racial factor. I would say from what I've seen, that's not necessarily true, but I would say a factor of that exists at least in a percentage. So if we remove them from coming here, and they then are technically here at home, now you don't have the issue of them interacting with people who may hate them or treat them differently. In fact, they are the ones who are going to set the standards for who their neighbors are, including you or I if we want to move down there. This will be a brand new market. This will be a place where they can now establish laws that conserve their environment. The Amazon, that's part of Venezuela, the rainforest, the natural quarries, and all the different things that exist in Venezuela, they do have rare earth minerals. They're more light rare earth minerals than heavy, which is the more valuable kind. But that is important because what it means is the more we spread out our mining, the more we spread out our jobs, the more people that can benefit from that economically, the more people can have a better rule of law where they live, a better standard of living, and the more we can push out the freedom that people are coming in here to get. We think so often that to move into somebody else's territory is to violate their sanctity of freedom. Excuse me. To violate their sovereignty. But in reality, if they're leaving their sovereignty to face death and torture and dismemberment and molestation and all the things that could happen as we see from this country, that doesn't, in my opinion, offer any sovereignty. It's the same thing as saying we can't go into North Korea because, gosh darn it, if Kim Jong-un isn't just a sovereign nation and that's not what peaceable people do. It's like, well, we now are being affected by their sovereignty. It's no longer sovereign. Our neighbors, our prison systems, our economic ability, social security, retirement systems, your parents and mine, your roads and mine, your prisons and mine, your education systems and mine, those are all affected by people who are doing bad things to other people who are trying to escape that. We can both agree on that. So why don't we cut that out where it started? If we go in there, we also see prison reform. Now you can, okay, let's take this, right? I'm all for removing the nonviolent criminals in the prison reform system that we have in the US that is a corporate system. Cool, gotcha. Now they're going to actually be used to benefit the American citizen versus to keep the American citizen, especially those of different minority populations, incarcerated. How? Well, now they have a very specific mandate of people to go after. Corrupt officials. This is a giant country, okay? Like I said, the population's big, and it's another continent where they can stand up these prisons or utilize the prisons here, from here all the way down to Caracas. They're going to have to now take in a whole new group of people who are much more violent, much more organized, and it will be a much higher priority of the police from here all the way down to Caracas and further on the borders with Brazil and Colombia to get the real baddies. They're going to go into the forests, into the crop fields, and into all the places where those drug cartels run things illegally, like illegal mining, illegal farming of substance, running illegal operations with Slusha and Fina to degrade the American population with hundreds of thousands of ODs a year. My family has been particularly affected by that before, too. I'm not going to go into any details or who, but I will say that that is something that I think of very strongly in an ability to go out and wipe those people out. I no longer consider them sovereign. The moment we start losing U.S. citizens by the tens, let alone the hundreds of thousands, due to external sovereignty affecting our internal safety, we not only affect our ability to control our families and keep them safe, we also degrade the ability to take in those who are seeking asylum. My family sought asylum during the genocide in the 19 teens, as we are all Armenian, and a majority of our family was killed. We were not given asylum because America, along with certain people in Europe, did not necessarily want to recognize what was going on over there because it was not economically helpful. Sucks to suck, nerd. We made it. Still here. Anyway, that's my 10 minutes on the left side. So we've got increase of jobs, better life, no need to go for lower paying wages on one side, because on the other side, they'll be able to live and work and build their community better where they're at. Sovereignty isn't a question because the sovereignty no longer exists. 73% of the population has voted to remove Maduro before the last election that they had in the in the 2000 teens. They had an election for legislature, and it was a 73% swing against Maduro. And he said, doesn't matter, we'll win in the presidential. And in the presidential, would you look at that? He won. Crazy. What is he like? He's just so good. That those machines keep turning over at night like something that happened here. What? No, we're not saying that. Anyway, point being, they're not sovereign anymore. They're seeking asylum. If somebody is seeking asylum here and we're giving them a home, then we have to consider that place our enemy. Because if this is safety and they are the people we're taking in, the people we're against are the ones that are making them unsafe. Now, on the flip side, Republicans. Let's go free market economy. Who are our two biggest trade partners? NAFTA did a great job laying that out very clearly. Mexico and Canada. Why? Well, there's a lot of things that get a lot more cheap when you eliminate the distance of where you need to transport goods, or where goods need to be transported from where they're quarried or picked over to where they're processed, over to where they're sold. And if you have an infrastructure that flows freely, that eliminates a majority of the cost, which is logistics. Even FedEx made a commercial about how good they are at logistics. Logistics makes or breaks success of economies, of businesses, of militaries. Your ability to effectively move is what kept Alexander the Great from the rest of his kingdom in Greece, and why Rome expanded so greatly. But why did Rome expand so greatly? For the glory of Rome. Okay, good. Then we can both agree that we're not doing that because we don't believe in pagan gods nor expansion or imperialism for the sake of being awesome. So what's a moral way that we expand our country? Well, you may not know this, but in the 1950s, i.e. 1959, we added Alaska and Hawaii. Most of you might have thought that happened a long time ago, but in reality, it happened during your parents' lifetime, if you're a millennial. If you're not, right before their lifetime. So it's real. And Arkansas, Arizona, and one other one came into the United States as states in the 1900s. So in about half of you viewing this were alive in that century. 5 states were added. We haven't added any. And we're a quarter of the way through. We're technically behind the other 2 centuries that America has existed in the 1800s and 1700s. As far as I'm concerned, Venezuela has a lot of population and a lot of resources that we would be more than happy to have. Well, what about the people there? Well, the Democrats may think that since they're socialists and they're seeking asylum and they vote blue here, that they're going to end up being a big Democrat win. Not so close. Not so safe? I don't know. 94% Christian as a body. Also, 97% what we would consider a minority. So you get the increase in diversity, and the other people get the increase in conservative Christian values. Both those things are something that either side want, right? I don't think I'm going to give up Christianity or anybody who's Christian for their skin color. I don't care what your color is. If you believe in God and you're willing to push out God's love and message of peace to everyone else, you're better than any skin color you could ever be. There's no such thing as a good skin color. There's just a good heart. So that's it. That's not a bad slogan. I'll have to sell that to somebody for a political ad. All right. Resources. We just kicked off big tariffs this year against China, and we have Russia that's moved in with China into Africa, largely kicked us out of our very badly picked resource pool. Okay, first off, pulling resources out of a continent that we already fought a civil war to stop enslaving people from there That was kind of a dumb move, but I understand if you think they were cheap and easy to take advantage of, but that is greed, even overshooting what is intelligent in the short term and the long term business wise. So, why does it make sense for South America? Well, now we have a land border, trains and roads, that can come from our southernmost part to our northernmost port. Additionally, we now have the Gulf of America. If you have the north part of the Gulf of America as the United States of America, and the south part of the United States of America as the America, and it engulfs this Gulf, which then all of a sudden has Puerto Rico on one side, and look at that, Mexico and somebody else just ended up being part of our trade partners. We now have this entire side of the globe and that entire shipping lane and vacation area completely locked down. Sovereign, you can't come in it. It's the Gulf of America. Dutch Antilles Island, sure, you can come in the Gulf of America. We're just going to start charging you tariffs if you want to come in. Dutch Antilles, French, British, Swiss, anybody who's got any kind of relationship to any island in the Caribbean, it's going to become tariffed. Well, what if they start running things like China and Russia are doing on our resources? Well, that's fine because we're going to own the resources for the north and south and central part of America, meaning all of those rare earth minerals that we might be losing out of Africa. Oh, would you look at that? An entire South America continent, which actually reaches further down to the south and further up to the north than anyone on that side. Africa's not touching. Okay. Yeah, it's getting close, but it's not exactly touching Antarctica. The south part of South America is. All right, we're getting right down there, okay? So if we take over this entire side, we have a Gulf of America. Now, all of a sudden, our resources, our reach, our expanse, yeah, Russia and Europe can go ahead and have the rest of that side of the world and keep destroying it because right now we're building. All right, we're building, baby. Venezuela, huge amounts of resources. They may not have the heavy rare earth minerals, but we have the Amazon. We have cultural just depth of history that to absorb. We have all these different things that are going to come in terms of ports. We now also gain a border. If you looked at our number two largest trade partners are the two that are on our borders, meaning the closest, meaning the least amount of money it takes to get from A to B to the consumer, meaning same thing now for Brazil and Colombia to our state or multiple states made out of Venezuela. What about this entire thing in our military? We don't want any more wars. Those of us who are veterans are all against going into new wars. Yeah, great. Ready? We already have the new leader set up. The world just gave her the Nobel Peace Prize for achieving nothing yet. Maria Machado. We already have 73% of the population who openly opposed the government, okay, in their voting. We know that they at least are willing to stand up to it. So the population of people who might be true believers, around about 10 to 15%, and those who have stake in the game because they're in with the cartels or in with the corruption in the government and they get a kickback. You want to know the thing about banana republics? I'll tell you right now because I've been to many of them. The citizens know who are corrupt. They know what house, what person, what group, and from where that money's coming from. They know. They keep track of it. Because if everyone's leaving, and I've been to different societies where they've, in Eastern Europe, left communism. And then all of a sudden capitalism comes in and it's, a toss-up. So the government's getting more and more corrupt within the vacuum of power. Then all of a sudden their neighbor's a billionaire. They know where that's coming from. They know who changed and they know what they did before. When you try to move into one of these places, it's not the same as like Russia trying to move into Ukraine. That's neighbors who speak the same language, have the same background, and literally have been tied at the hip for off and on as far back as we can go on that side of modern history, right? Venezuela has internal ethnic disputes with the Afro-Latin American communities on the coastal villages. So that's leftover Caribbean trading. You have the Bolivian people who are have a lot of their resources stripped out, and you have everybody who's ever been impoverished or lost their money or their business or anything due to socialism. Okay, these people are going to be very much on board with not only overthrowing, but the idea of if we were to give them statehood to legitimize them in the South of America, not only would they instantly catapult back to the jewel of South America and the number one Latin American community globally, because our GDP would then be their GDP. So everything that's happening there in terms of stock projections, real estate, et cetera, is growth from the moment we take over. For them, it goes from 70% deficit of what they were producing GDP when they were down to now, sky's the limit. Brand new vacation homes. Mining, timber, everything else needs regulations. That's jobs. Policing, that's jobs. Education and standing up educational abilities, jobs. More access to the Amazon rainforest and ability to conserve it than ever. That's not just jobs. That's something that I and people who are completely against me in terms of many morals both can agree on. We love nature. It's a beautiful thing. It should be conserved. How do we do that? If we expand more of our global, reach, we don't have to mine in this land or, strip mine over there or drill here. We can keep a good portion of those the way they are and then turn it over like a farmer does with several different fields and let it regrow itself, let nature take its course, and continue responsible allocation and collection of resources and pushing it out. Also, if it's cheaper to get people goods where they're at, like it is for North America, it will be cheaper for the people of Venezuela. And because of that, it will make it cheaper and more affordable for the people in Colombia, in Brazil, in Dominican Republic, in Puerto Rico. If we condense the area of where goods are produced and strip mined or just resourced at, all of a sudden, instead of transporting a sack of potatoes from here 3, 4, 5,000 miles and 2 continents away, it's literally 20 miles that way to a Kroger, which now exists in this country. And one of the number one things that most people have looked at when they're looking at who's our friends, who's our enemies, let's pull up a map. This is the McDonald's index of who is friends and who is foe over the years. If you'll notice, South America has a much longer history with McDonald's than Europe. I'm just saying, if we were just going based on McDonald's alone, South America is much more our buddy. You could see almost all of the continent is on board with Mickey D's, baby. Okay? But Eastern Europe, most of Africa, why? Well, McDonald's wants to make money, which means they need people with money to pay them that money. And they also want to cut costs and do all these different things that require the highest functioning version of society to create the cheapest version of product. All right, we went 12 minutes for each of them. But that is going to be it for right now. Hopefully we made some leeway on one side or the other for you guys to say, you know what? Maybe we want to invade Venezuela. Yeah, no, we probably do. Because if we're looking at everything, kind of a closing argument on this side, if we're looking at everything that's going on in Europe, it's 3 to 4 years of war with Eastern Europe, and we have a group of people who really don't like us and haven't acted like our friends since NATO was created in terms of who's paying into what global defense. The continent of Africa has very clearly made their decision as to who they're going with, and while it is horrible and a lot of corruption has ended up with more slavery now on that continent than has ever been documented or counted previously that we're aware of. So that's horrible. How do we combat that? Well, it's not by sending more American blood and treasure. I hear that a lot on the news now, but it's not by sacrificing to go and take other people's lands and then help them build. We don't do that. That's called imperialism or nation building. We don't need to do that. All we need to do is let people join. Venezuela wants to throw off their dictator? Sweet. She wants to be a person who goes for privatized business, she being Maria Machado? Sweet. Let's help them. If 73 or 80% of this entire country already wants to get rid of their entire government, and we come in and we say, your government's over, minimal casualties, minimal loss of American expenditure, extreme upside. How many people's lives improve from us building the family? One of the primary arguments people say is, oh, well, you can't do that to somebody. That's their country. They're leaving their country. if you want to make it better for them, the answer is not to make it worse here. It's to make it better everywhere. And that doesn't mean going and imposing on somebody, XYZ. And that is why it doesn't necessarily work in certain parts of Europe and Africa. Difference in morality, difference in social makeup. Our laws of respecting a human being are Judeo-Christian values, meaning they source in the Magna Carta, and also the rights, not just property rights, but human rights come from God, not from the state, which is why we are the only one who technically have a protected First Amendment of speech. Other people have it written in, but if God is not the highest form of the land in terms of the branch of power, and everybody else doesn't fall underneath that, then your rights come from man and can be taken from man, as we've seen in Europe. So Europe's out. South America, largely on board, 94% Christian in that country. Texas and Florida have extreme levels of Latin American population. So just in terms of ethnicity, that's our family. We have people, we already border that entire area, which is now the Gulf of America. And if we're going to bring in people by the millions, why wouldn't we just help them build their home and make it our home as well? They're your neighbor. You're going to kick out your neighbor, the person who's singing a sound? Absolutely not. Rather than opening up my house and taking in 50 people, which none of us have the ability for, and it's going to make it less fun to live here for everybody and suffering, why don't we all benefit? How do we get all these resources back? How do we get out from the relationship with China? How do we, stop being reliant upon them purchasing our products? We threw tariffs and they threw restrictions on our rare earth minerals. Well, we have all the oil we want, but we could get some more, and we could get more people, and we could get better resources in a quicker version by just leaving that side of the earth and just growing here, not forcibly removing people like Brazil or something, or Mexico from power, but there may be an environment in which that group, similar to the Republic of Texas, looks at the country, looks at their small country, looks back at the country and says, you know what? We're doing okay, but the federal resources to build this would be really okay. Sure, why not? There are more people in Venezuela who want to come to the United States and who want to overthrow their government than exist in the United States who have an approval of their government. Do you understand what that means? The majority of them want this. Not saying they want to not be Venezuela anymore, but they may want to join an environment that is much different in terms of strategy than us nation building in the third world, or than us working through the thousands of plus years of corruption in Eastern Europe. We don't need to battle across on the other side of the globe for our oil or our resources or our rare earth minerals or our workforce. We don't need any of it. It's all right here. The new world. Welcome to it. It's pretty freaking fantastic. The resources, the people, and then the background of everyone who came over here. There's a difference in Latin America, Central America, South America. I mean, there's some, anyway, neither here nor there where I was going with that. I was just getting into a weird history lesson that wasn't necessary. But there is a population in the Americas that is separate from the population in Europe and Asia. Africa, we've got to kind of include in this because they were kind of a good group of the population was forcibly brought in to be part of this experiment, right? And we have shed our own blood to become a nation that is underneath one God and underneath a rule of law for all. Granted, there's corruption and sin everywhere, all over. That's what man does, as we see with the Book of Wisdom, which we'll get back to in a second after we're done with this. But if I had to pick either Russia and China's role or our role in terms of expansion, you guys don't like it there? No, we hate it. You guys want to come here? Yeah, it really sucks here. What if it was as good there as it is good here? How'd you do that? Actually, we could probably make it cheaper for you too, because Everything here is super built up. There, it'll be all new. You guys will probably be the number one place for everyone to live. Yeah, do that. Well, they don't want me to nation build. Our nation's already built. Yeah. There's just this whole thing where, like, for 100 years, people were really Europe was really against people invading each other. So for some reason, the group of people that were not Europe, who saved Europe, all of a sudden became the bad guys who are policing the whole world, even though they kept asking us to go do stuff. Yeah. So what we're going to do is just kind of let them have their own thing. Abandon Europe. Abandon NATO. Leave the EU. Leave NATO. Leave it. Leave it. What? What do you got for us, guys? Oh, we have all this history. Look at these buildings. Yeah, some of us find that interesting, and some of us find that very offensive. Offensive? Why? Well, because, I mean, regardless of how beautiful we might think it is or what the history is like, they're not wrong. A lot of that was built on the backs of other people. Well, what a culture, food. This is your heritage. Heritage is pretty much from everywhere now. Actually, we identify more here than we do there. What do you mean? Well, I don't say I'm European American or Asian American. I'm Armenian, which specifically goes back to my family heritage, but I don't really give a shit what other parts of the world that my family came from that was over there. We're all here now, so we're American. And we don't say United States of American, notice. We say American. It's the group of people that left, that said, no. The reason we left Europe, the reason other people left in the 1900s and the 1800s and in the 2000s seeking asylum was because the place they left was better to die than to live, meaning they sought life in freedom, meaning if those people that are the primary group of asylum seekers here in the U.S. are coming here, why make them make that trip? It's humanitarian to reach out and say, does it suck there? Yeah, it really does. Well, we can come help you build it. Wave the little American flag, Venezuelans, because I'll tell you what's happening. We saw China trying to pull and, call our bluff by making 7 rare earth minerals on the heavy side, which are important for AI and shipbuilding. They were like, whoop, you can't get access to these. Well, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we can't, but you're also mining those with slave labor. So not sure we even want to buy those from you. Morally, it's probably less morally reprehensible to go and overthrow a socialist dictatorship that's enslaving and murdering their own people than to purchase and encourage slave labor in China, Fina and Slusha, in the African continent. That's the short version. Is it morally reprehensible to go and overthrow a group of people who are creating the largest humanitarian crisis in the group of asylum seekers who then have to go through the most dangerous and almost a surety of at least assault or advantage being taken of them, and on the other side, 95% getting raped or at least trafficked into something? Is it more humanitarian to let them stay there and figure it out as their society degrades into nothing and ours keeps getting affected? Our sovereignty is affected, which is why they were blowing up their boats. But it's not the drug trade that's making us go over there. That's just a smokescreen to say, hey, we're going to do this because Russia and China very clearly are in the world domination game right now, and Europe ain't doing shit. Who's there to fight them? If they go back through Europe, if they take over Africa, the only way we get over there is by sending people over. What is Europe going to do? Oh, let's see. World War I, how'd that go? Oh, look at that. Belly up. World War II, that go. Oh, belly up. Pretty much all of you guys got taken over. It's just those 2 world wars, though. Okay. Moors. Belly up, too. What happened there? Yeah, the northern part of Africa came and took over with Arabia, and all of the entirety of all of Europe and Christendom in general had to stand up and go on crusades. Oh, was that quick? Nah, we went on a lot of them. Europe, you guys, you're not good at this. And you also have everything mined to shit. Sorry, language. You've already treated everybody in a certain way. You've already given up your belly to everybody who's going to invade you. You're not a good partner. And just because the rich and wealthy liberals who go to elite schools or get to go to Stade or frickin' Vienna on their weekends or their trips abroad, and they have a deep emotional connection to the Alps, I don't give a shit. I don't, because like 95% of the United States population will never visit those places and will never see them or benefit from it. You know what they could benefit from? Taking a train down to Caracas and seeing what the south part of the United States of America looks like in the southern hemisphere. United States could benefit from all of our children no longer getting fentanyl, which has been pushed by people who are not only enslaving, raping, and human trafficking their own populations, but they're affecting us in the millions. Why are we going into Venezuela? Why haven't we gone in earlier? Honestly, we watched a nation just destroy itself. We watched the entirety of Latin America go from yes to no. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis. We know what Soviets do. We know what socialism and communism does, and we let it come in because we wanted to respect people's sovereignty. Respect the sovereignty. How could you ever invade a sovereign nation? Excuse my language, but it smells like bitch in here. Okay? We're not Europe. We handle our business, and we handle it so well that we had to come and save Europe's back for the last all of our existence since we stood ourselves up. Not doing it anymore. You want to enslave Africa again? I'll tell you what. We're going to build ourselves up over on this side of the globe. We'll come liberate Africa when Africa's ready, like all the continents. All the continent. Yeah, I think probably Egypt's going to be all right. I think probably, like Cote d'Ivoire and Ivory Coast and other places like that have coastal regions will be okay. But, Tanzania, Algeria, Kenya, Sudan, let's see here, Somalia, Ethiopia, Congo, South Africa's coastal, they'll still probably be okay. Namibia, Zambia. Anybody who's in the heart or the central part is going to get screwed. No access to ports, and it's the primary reason you don't go to land war in Asia during the Roman or the Greek empires either. It's just too far inland, and we don't have enough resources. So people will remain poor or taken advantage of until we build up enough of the world that China, Slusha, and Fina no longer have a say. There you go. That is that's our wrap on the news and the quick 10-minute argument for each side segment. So we're going to roll right into the Bible study. If you enjoyed this, please smash the like button and subscribe to all the things that all the people say. But I mean, most of those people say it and they have millions of followers. We need followers. So please, sir, please, ma'am, smash it one more time for us. Come in closer. Timmy's not going to make it to Christmas if you don't. All right. So we're going to roll into the biblical version or discussion on here. Thank you for joining. If you want to stick around. This will continue as part of the episode, but we wanted to give you a send-off. So welcome back to the end of the show, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. This is the biblical portion. We're just going to read the other two and remind you of the first reading for the day, which was from the Book of Wisdom, but also responsorial psalm comes in similar, discussing justice once again. Give justice to the weak and to the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. I say, you are God's sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, you shall die like men and fall like any prince. Humility. Book of Wisdom and the Psalms bringing in and giving us an understanding of several different things. Humility, responsibility being key. Responsibility not just to your people, but to be given that is to be burdened with the weight of responsibility, which many people don't recognize. And this is calling out through those two chapters for wisdom and for the Psalms. Remember, getting the high level of things here in life is not a benefit. It's a test. You want more challenge if you're getting more. If you're given it and you don't do well with it, it's a trap. It's a snare. You have a higher possibility of failing and letting people down when you take on responsibility. Thus, having very little and enjoying it is something that becomes a bit of a virtue. Blessed are the poor in spirit is a beatitude, not about being poor and it's cool to be poor. It's not saying it's good to be lazy or a bum. It's saying if you so devalue everything that no matter what your financial status is in life, you have a spiritual center that does not raise goods or things above that which God has made holy, i.e., his home for us and for all of those to live and treat each other in the love of Christ, to spread the love in the world, then, that should take over the highest level of value. If it doesn't, then you're not poor in spirit, you're rich in spirit, meaning spiritually, all you're focused on is ownership of things that will pass away. As we see in the book of wisdom, the ones who are given these lofty titles will be judged. And we're just going to roll into the gospel, and then we're going to close with what the understanding is for today. Gospels from Luke 11, Luke 17, 11 to 19 inclusive. On the way to Jerusalem, he was passing along between Samaria and Galilee. And as he entered the village, he was met by 10 lepers who stood at a distance and lifted up their voices and said, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice, and he fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Now he was a Samaritan. Then said Jesus, "Were not 10 cleansed? Where were the other 9? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except for this foreigner?" And he said to him, "Rise and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." Gospel of the Lord. Now, amazing day for these. Amazing day. First off, you've got the description of leadership and an understanding of leadership and the weight that will come with that. And then we have the psalm, which is specifically recalling those who are in that spot of leadership to remember you're going to die. All of us die. Don't make yourself out to be gods. Don't praise yourself. Don't hold yourself high. Hold God high. And then we get into the moment with the real Prince of Peace, the one who is the true King of Kings. And he's presented with a congregation of lepers. So poignant for today as a piece. So poignant. Lepers back then weren't just people who had skin diseases that were deadly, which was seen as like one of the worst things because it was incurable. It means you're going to die and you're going to die in pain. But also on top of that, you're not going to be allowed to physically be around your loved ones. It's a death sentence, but it's the worst death sentence at that point in time because not only would you become unclean physically, spiritually, they had an understanding that they may be damned. They may be destined for hell or destruction. God may have deemed them physically unclean, and back then that equated because some ecclesiastical misinterpretation of what is called the Tanakh, but we know it as the Old Testament, from Leviticus or Ecclesiastes. I got to go back and double check. But basically, the idea of cleanliness and the law that was given to Moses in the Old Testament is being carried into the gospel because these are people living during that time where that is the primary law of the land of the people who are writing the book that we're reading, giving the account of the events, right? So we understand these people who are lepers are condemned to death by just sheer bad luck. Sorry, you must have done something that deserved it. I sneezed one day and I cut my hand on a piece of pottery and it just so happened somebody had leprosy. Yeah, well, God wanted that. Complete and utter unfair situation. Nobody deserves that. Let me rephrase that. As Christians, we are not allowed to determine whether or not somebody deserves that, and we are to treat them in a way that they don't. Let's treat them in the way that Jesus treated them. It's interesting because we see a lot of people who treat asylum seekers in this scenario like lepers. We see people who recognize God's love and recognize something like an asylum seeker, somebody who's just trying to find a better place, who's gone through the ringer, who's come out of the leper hole and risk their life and limb and societal maybe stoning or killing immediately because you get close to them as a leper. You're not allowed to do that, or you will be killed instantly. They risk all this to come to a place where Christ is king, where the law of the land is that given down by the very God who we're discussing in the Bible right now. The same one who healed the leper is the same one who the Lady Liberty and the rest of our country are supposed to be welcoming. And that's where a lot of our discussion ends. You know, what is a virtuous love? How to be virtuous to these people? Are they truly seeking God's love? Are they truly coming intentionally in a good way, or are they coming in a bad way? Are they coming greedfully, and they coming like everything's owed to them? Or are they coming with, just open sores on their hands and wounds on their heart and their family, lifting them up, just wanting to touch a piece of the fabric, just wanting to be involved in the possibility of being healed, of a life that's better, of a life that God ordained for us? So we actually see an interesting shift from the beginning to the end of the readings today, because we go from a very high level of discussion, wisdom coming from, this discussion of kings and leadership. And so that's where the mentality is of people who are discussing and writing this. And the prophets and the people, this is the highest level of society discussing how to remain virtuous. And then we get into the Psalms, and Psalms primarily written by David, right, as a king. Wisdom and other things being written by, I'm sorry, I'm blanking because it's late, but I believe King Solomon. We can get back into that. But we move from a high level of thought and responsibility to a decrying of virtueless actions and remembering our mortality. And then we end with the gospel, the truth, the good news, ending in a moment of complete and utter lowest level of not just your physical, but emotional level. A leper's it's terminal illness. It's stage 4, and you've already lost 2 limbs. You have no hair, and your white blood cell count is lower than the dollar menu. Okay, it's less than 1. Right? McDonald's callback, no affiliation. But we have those who are truly humble and dying that meet the actual king. So it was intentional. If you look at it, we see positions, responsibility, discussions at a high level of those who are, have great and grand ideas of how they're going to lead. God put me here, and I am leading as an ecclesiastical leader. That's Europe for the last 2,000 years, right? The right to rule, divine intervention through the Church of England and Henry VIII, blah, 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 blah. Except for the real ruler, the one who actually created all of us and has the largest amount of congregation. In that moment, his congregation are men condemned to die, men viewed as unclean. His kingdom that he sees is people, not all of whom are even part of his ethnic group. This is where, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you'll see why J.R.R. Tolkien kept bringing in the hands of the king or the hands of a healer, because it wasn't just the fact that, hey, he's a doc, or he's a nurse. It meant healing more than just your wounds, more than just your physical maladies or your economic or your financial woes. It meant healing the soul of somebody. And that was a gift that is a kingly gift, the gift that only the one who has a right to your soul can do. So when they're healing somebody here, we see what kingship is and wisdom from a king and from prophets and from Psalms and everything. We see that, and then we see the actual king and his group that he is reigning over, his disciples who don't understand their role yet, holistically, nor wholly who this person is in front of them. And yet those condemned to die, the lowest members of society, are the ones that he takes pity on, letting us know what those other kings and that we just read about should have kept in mind. Here's what an ideal ruler does. Tend to them. That's a Samaritan. It's not one of your ethnic population. Doesn't matter. They're mine. If somebody is in need, which we all are. Jesus says they're mine. They're mine. Nobody else can have them. They brought themselves to me. I claim them. And what does he do? Sends them on the way. Go back to the temple and show yourself to the priest. Go and show yourself to those who are, as we connect this now to the Old Testament, to the Tanakh, the followers of the law of Moses. Go show yourselves to them, and they will now have to deal with an understanding of, well, if they're not if they're not lepers anymore, are they unclean anymore? Because now they have to reevaluate their decision-making paradigm. We thought physically meant spiritually. It's like, well, they're physically clean. Does that mean they're spiritually clean? And what did they do to deserve that cleanliness? If they haven't done anything to change their financial status, if they haven't saved somebody's life, they just asked God for forgiveness. And wouldn't you know, what is he like? He forgave them. There was a mission being sent, and that's why these things are connected. That's why you read things in a calendar, and why 2,000 years of people specifically spending their whole life studying this is important. What is being said? One returns. One returns and falls prostrate in front of the God who actually saved him. One who has been brought back into the civilianship of that eternal kingdom, who recognizes that internally, is not looking at his hands and feet and running off to go yell, "Hi, he's clean," and celebrate his moment in this temporal life, because as we see in Psalms, you shall die like men. He, along with all the other ones, knew that he was going to die. Only he remembered that this death is far less important than the life with the one who just healed him, and he recognized the true king. These are kings that have been set up, and the Psalms and wisdom is discussing specifically people who set themselves up as king, people who have been set up as king and fail, people who determine that they have an ordained right to rule because they want to. But a real king heals. A real king looks at a situation with people who are asking and crying out, and those are his flock. That's his people. So a lot of us forget that, especially when we're trying to do something. There's an understanding of your household, your family, loyalty. It's very difficult to go into the world and look specifically to help the lowest, which in this environment is people like those coming from Venezuela, lepers. I'm not calling people from Venezuela or another country lepers. I'm saying physically they're exhausted. They consider it a death penalty to be there. They're leaving. Maybe they've been incentivized. Maybe they've heard somebody over here has the ability to heal them, i.e. improve their economic situation, improve their family situation. Only one out of the ones who were healed, because Jesus said we're all not all 10 healed, all 9 have gone. Why has only one come back? And why is it only one who wasn't even a member of this society? Wasn't ethnically like me. Didn't look like my color. Doesn't come from my ethnic background. Why is that the one that came back and all you others who are like me didn't care? Well, that's God. That's a true ruler. The hands of the king are the hands of a healer. Okay? If you're looking for somebody to look up to in life, to learn from, there will be a lot of people who in the world will claim success. There will be people who have extreme levels of success. Go back to Psalms. They will all die like men. So too will you and I. From this, I can tell you what I would say in terms of how you're going to pick your life leader, who you allow to lead you. Pick the one who's going to give you life beyond the things that fade in this world, beyond the things that occur here. Because if this is all you have, relative to eternity, a time period is nothing. It still has an existing point, but it's a point. That's it. And then it's gone. The one who can bring you out of that existence and turn you into a prince or a princess or a member of the family eternal, the one who actually created your ability to live forever, we see here with the Samaritan who returns out of all the lepers. It's the one who is not focused on the thing that all the other people in society are focused on. All the people who weren't that leper who returned are the same ethnic and temporal moral code of people that were in the same group as Jesus. They see somebody who healed them. What is their focus? The ultimate good. They're physically clean. They can go back and participate in society. They can go and live their lives normally. It's going to be a great day. They can go and hug their family members. They get to go back to their dog or their wife or whoever, and they're going to go back and live again. The only one who actually ends up living after that is the guy who walks back, puts his face in the ground before the one who gave him life, and understands there's nothing over there for me. They already proclaimed me dead. I did nothing that we know of. Doesn't really matter for the story. But he did nothing necessarily to contract this that was part of a sinful nature. But the world is not fair. The world will turn you into a leper if it decides to. It will watch you and make fun of you and push you out to die like a man. That's what you are. You are human. Male and female. All of us are going to die. Only one recognized that there was something beyond that. Immediately after his whole body is healed, the rest of them have spent the whole time dying, thinking about getting back to the society where they're going to die again. One person had out of 10, wherewithal to understand while he was dying, there's no point to that society. If I'm just dead because of a skin disease, if I'm just dead because of a random number, how does that place have any real value? It doesn't. It's like the kind of people who come away from a mortal situation and have their life changed. It has no value to me beyond just being dead like me. It's also worthless. It will die. I will die. If I'm clean and I can rejoin it, I'm still going to die. Why would I go back? My body's healed, but there's only one person who can change that reality physically. Somebody just changed reality. I'm not going to go back to the group of people who live in reality. I'm going to go back to the one who just changed it with a word. That's all I want to serve. If I'm going to go back to having an important figure above me, a moral high ground, somebody who I listen to as moral leader, where else will I go? See, to him, he hadn't been indoctrinated into the idea of this version of you or that version of you. Or he had, and he'd shaken that off, because at the end of the day, as we see in Psalms, you're all going to die. For me, wrote my first will when I was 20, joining the military, right? Like for us in the military, there's kind of a sick obsession or understanding. There's a memento mori, remember your death, or practice your death as a way of understanding that you are mortal, so that you no longer fear death, right? But for many people, they spend their entire life avoiding the thought of it. Give it a test. Not in a dark way, not in a sad way, just an understanding that there is another path after this that leads on. There are some logical proofs that I could point you towards. If you have an atheist side, there are some ethical and doctoral ones. If you're on the side that we are eternal, but you serve a different God, let me know. Add something in the comments. I can probably guess where you're coming from, depending on what you say. But in this scenario, we have a group of people who have created the ultimate level in their minds of society. Everybody's a worker. Everybody gets equality in the pay. Everybody gets equality in the benefits. And what ends up happening when everybody is the same? All of a sudden, there's poor and extremely rich again. Yeah, they just didn't do it right. Okay, let's try it in China. Almost as big of a continent area kind of thing as, at that time, as Russia. How'd it go in Russia? Yeah, the Soviet Union collapsed. Why? Well, they just had too many people. There's too many different heads doing everything. Didn't work out. Okay, China. Yeah, they had too many people. Too many heads doing everything. Well, Russia had different countries. China was one country. Yeah, this thing with the farmers where like the people who were in the cities didn't understand how to farm, so they kind of screwed up the farming thing. Really? Yeah. How'd that happen? Yeah, just bad luck, man. You know, it wasn't. You know, we know better. We're gonna do it better this time. We're Venezuela. It's the '80s. Ronald Reagan's in charge. Star Wars. You know, Back to the Future. It's gonna be great. Oh yeah. How's that going? Yeah. 93% of us are impoverished. What happened there? I don't know. It was like really fast. Like 10 minutes, everything was great. And then for the last 25 years, it's been horrible. That's weird because we got this guy over here from like Connecticut or Maine or something, really crazy hair that says you guys like waiting in bread lines or that's a good thing. Yeah, it's not a good thing. Whoever that is full of malarkey. We'll use something from the Tanakh mixed with. No, I'm joking. We'll just go into some Yiddish. How about that? We'll get the people from one side who thought it might be on one side. Now they're like, oh wait, is he on the Meshugana? Throw the kibosh on it. You know, get that schwitz off your plate. Get it out of here. All right. I'm Armenian. You probably don't think it is where it is, but it's right in the middle next to. I'm going to help you out here. Because this is always something I have to show people. I could probably pop up things above me to show you, but we're going to go, okay, big-ass country here that you know is Turkey. Yeah, about half of that was Armenia. And then down over here, we've got, like, you know, Iraq, Iran, Syria, the whole, like, Arabic... Where am I going with this? Nowhere. I'm sorry. As I was. We're pretty much done with the lesson, but the point being, if you're viewing what's happening right now, and we want to understand, is it right to go in and invade a sovereign country? Couple questions. Who's their prince? Is he running things well? Sovereignty implies right to rule. Sovereignty implies legal and moral backing. Does Maduro have moral and legal backing around his election if the entire world currently already considers it a failed dictatorial socialist state? 70% of their GDP is no longer produced. Their people are starving. Well, what happens to people like that? Because as servants of his kingdom, you do not rule rightly, nor keep the law, nor walk according to the purpose of God. Well, it sounds like what's going on there. So what happens next? He will come upon you terribly and swiftly, because severe judgment falls on those in high places. Well, there's not much more terrible and swift than an aircraft carrier group full of F-22s and F-35s, and then just a few boats full of the most dangerous and lethal fighting force the world's ever seen, the United States Marine. Hoorah. Semper Fi. Nicolas Maduro, my friend, you may want to go to Venezuela or you need, afuera into another country. You might want to call up your friends, tu muchachos, in Slusia or Fana, and give them a call on the telephone because you know more. Okay? You're about to be out of there, bud. As America, if I was to give perspective on this from a completely neutral, non-militaristic background, you know what? I don't want to see Americans lose their lives. I hate foreign wars where we're getting nothing out of it. If you throw on the plate that, you know, there's some potential loss of life over the gain of 30 million new neighbors and the liberation of one of the most beautiful places on the face of the planet and creating a great place for the rest of America to then, you know, grow our GDP and combat tyranny of socialism and failed states and corrupt bureaucracies on the other side of the world? I'm listening. Your only right to rule comes from God. Your sovereignty is made up, and it only lasts as long until the next person conquers you. So the reality is, cry out for Jesus and fall before him whenever you're given a benefit, a fault, anything that happens. The only one you need to be focused on in this moment, falling face prostrate before the one who can give you life. I don't necessarily want to be elevated. I do this show now. I started because I have seen so much bad leadership in so many positions in the most powerful government in the world. It's impossible for me to impart upon my friends or family the understanding of how bad it really is. You have no idea. It is so depressing. Several of my friends who have observed it killed themselves in their barracks. Just observation and being around the corruption, not necessarily like something horrible happening in their life. Just living in that environment caused everybody there to fall into a deep level of depression. That's how evil it can get there, especially around a department that specifically has to do with defense, but it's bloodshed, it's war. It's either fighting tyranny or causing it. And when you have a leader like we did back in that time frame, which I don't know what time frame was that. Well, it wasn't the current leader, I'll tell you that much, and it was a lot worse. My friends killed themselves. They found death more reasonable and more livable than life in this nation, underneath the people in the city who are making these determinations and have raised themselves up like kings, who consider themselves leaders. But they too will die like men. My friends, my brothers and sisters who have taken their lives, they were under leadership. I hold myself accountable for anything that happens to them that I could have been a better example of Christ. That's all I can do. I can't judge others based on how they admit or don't admit virtue into their life and their leadership roles. But with what's going on right now in Venezuela, I'm looking at the Caribbean and I'm looking at South America, and I'm seeing a place that has become just riddled with a lack of responsible leadership. Colombia is the number one place for, on this hemisphere, sex and prostitution seeking from people, from the 20s to 40s to 50s that don't want to fly over to, Phuket or somewhere over in Asia. And what is that one for? The ones over here who want to go over and do things to kids. It's evil. It's all evil. And this is supposed to be the first world. They're supposed to be the Pharisees. They're supposed to run this glorious palace of alabaster stone, this temple to the God of right to rule, sovereignty. Couldn't save my friends. Couldn't save yours. Couldn't save that family member from fentanyl. Couldn't save that family member from getting raped. There's only one salvation from the actual leprosy that is living in this world, and it's eternal life, and there's only one person in that story who recognized it. 1 out of 10, 10%, which means that if you're going to start to look at your neighbors as good people or bad people, just remember two things. One, 10% in that story, faced with their creator, actually turned around and recognized it in their face. A lot of us pray for God, send me a sign. I'll believe in you, send me a sign. Don't put your Lord to the test. Send me a sign. If you're really real, if you actually love me, send me a sign. And then he sends you one. He delivered his son not just to these 10 people who were crying out for God's mercy, but in person. He said hi, and he healed them. And they turned right around and went back to death. Only one found life walking away from what we consider our responsibility. So, ladies and gents, appreciate those who have stuck with us. Oh yeah, 10%. The other thing about that is, remember, only 10%, 1 out of 10 in that group actually realized and recognized God even when he stood them in their face and healed them. The other one is something my dad always says, less than half the people on the road are below average intelligence. I think I even said that wrong. You get the point. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this wonderful Wednesday evening. We hope you're well. Go forth and do whatever it is you do. What's that movie from? All right, we're out. Bye.